Hello, my name is Christian Avendano, and I am doing my presentation on ethical hacking. As a cybersecurity major, have always found a problem with ethical hacking. For one, it's a subject that's kind of touchy. Uh, it's a hit and miss because, um, well, let's start with the definition of ethical hacking. In the glossary, ethical hacking is written as the identification and exploitation of cybersecurity vulnerabilities across IT environments for legitimate and non malicious purposes. Ethical hacking is known in the cybersecurity world as white hat hacking. So there's a difference between white hat hacking and black hat hacking. Uh, white hat white hat hacking is the pretty much the ethical part of hacking where companies use it for checking for vulnerabilities. Many companies hire companies like I believe there's one company called Red Scan that pretty much gets access to your website from from the public's eye view to the back end where all the editing is done and the coding is done. So what they do is they go in, check for vulnerabilities on the public side where any uh, hackers that have malicious intent you know um, can find loopholes to get into the website. So what they do is they test for different loopholes and pretty much create code patches. So code patches pretty much covers that hole. So uh, those patches can have two different types of outcomes. They could either block a hacker from coming in and either locking the website down and holding the website down for ransom, which happened not so long ago to dealerships across the country. They were running a program called CDK, and what hackers in the UK did was pretty much lock this website completely down. Well, this program that was ran through a website, and what they did was locked the website down so dealerships all across the country could not write service reports, cannot write customer quotes for repairs, paint jobs, anything that required a service through the dealership had to be written pretty much on paper invoice. And what happened after that was that I believe after a week, the people who created the software that hacked into the CDK software uh, notified the CEO of the company and let them know that they are demanding a ransom for the program to be released. Ultimately, they held out as much as they possibly could, but ultimately ended up paying the ransom to release the website so that all these dealerships that use their software can go back to business as usual. And that ransom was in the millions. So white hat hacking is pretty much the good guys when it comes to hackers. Um, going into websites and checking for any type of vulnerabilities that your website might have, especially when it has high traffic, high income, anything that has to do with millions and millions of dollars coming through that one website a day, a month. So what these hackers are hired to do is come in, check for loopholes, check for any type of sensitive information that could be leaked, and pretty much you know uh, let the CEO, let the company know that what their findings were. But there's also a thing called black hat hackers. What these are pretty much people who hack for the intent to either hold ransom um, or get sensitive information that they could sell on the black market, or even hack into bank accounts that can just completely drain your bank account and leave you with nothing. And most of the time, banks will say, well, pretty much they just wash their hands of it and say, well, there's nothing we can do. We don't know where the money went. So what happens is, these black hat hackers ultimately, once, they finish, with their malicious intent, are recruited into the good guy side because they are the ones who know what loopholes they're looking for, what vulnerabilities can be found on websites, what have they found and seen before. So, in essence, white hat hacking is considered like the good guys of the industry. But ethical hacking, in my uh, sense of judgment, coming from somebody who's studying this subject, is I consider it unethical because, for one, there's so many layers that hacking or just pretty much ethical hacking has to go through in order to find these vulnerabilities that overall paints the bigger picture of you know what type of information, what type of steps need to be gone through, and what really is looked at when they're trying to find these loopholes. So one of the things that you know well, one of the bigger things is the invasion of privacy. Hacking often involves unauthorized access to computer systems and networks, which can expose sensitive data and violate users' sense of security. This usually means that passwords, sensitive information that's already on the computer, like a lot of people keep their bank information, a lot of people keep their, finances logged on a computer. And if you do this on your work computer, and your CEO gives permission to ethical hackers to hack the whole system, they have access to all this information because they have, I guess you can say, some sort of accessibility and the okay from the CEO or the person who hired these contractors to basically go in and look at everything. So that's one of the big red flags that comes with ethical hacking. Um, Another thing that I can consider an issue would be damage. Hacking uh, involves a lot of layers, involves a lot of steps, a lot of software, a lot of gauging what works and what doesn't. So with that, even though they gave them permission to go in and pretty much check the system, they can damage the systems without even taking any accountability, because all they have to do is say, well, we pretty much got the okay to do what we needed to do, and that's pretty much it. They wash their hands of it, and that's it. That's your problem now. There's also an issue called the slippery slope. um Black hat tactics potentially lead to unethical behaviors. If a hacker sees an opportunity that can gain him far more than what he is working for, he is most likely going to take that chance. So like I had mentioned earlier, most of the people that go into hacking um, have that tendency or that background of, we did things that were unethical, like stealing, ransom, selling personal information on the dark web, stuff like that, which is just considered malicious um, tendencies. Still in their background, which is why they were, either contracted to join the good guys in trying to find these loopholes for these businesses. But in essence, how far does it really go? How safe are you really with these people going through your systems, through your files? What is there to say that these guys aren't, looking at more than they're supposed to be looking at? And you know, white hat hacking is always in essence taken as, they're good guys. These guys are just here to check to make sure, that we don't have any bad guys coming in. But in essence, they were once the bad guys that were coming in. So it's a slippery slope, and it's something that they don't really take into account because all they're worried about is finding the loopholes. There's another thing called scope creep. Hackers should always stay within the scope of the project and not cross boundaries noted on the contract, which, in essence, yes, they can outline things as you're only supposed to stay within these boundaries, but what is there to say, or how do people actually know that these people aren't actually crossing those boundaries, because most of the main reason that these people are hired is because the people doing the hiring don't know what they're looking for, and these people do. So how do they really know what is being looked at and what isn't? And this leads into a bigger topic of confidentiality. Confidentiality is a big one, especially when it comes to big companies like Google, Chase Bank, Bank of America, financial, especially financial companies. Um, Confidentiality doesn't go a long way as much as people think. When companies like this come in and pretty much overhaul the whole system, they tend to take information with them. And what they do with that information is, from what I found, was they sell it. They sell it to competitors, people who are actually looking to hack into those big companies, and find loopholes to gain access for the bigger price tag. And confidentiality is one thing that doesn't go as far as it should with ethical hacking, which is, I always find to be, a gray area, which I always find it to be unethical. Um, and then one of the bigger things that often doesn't get taken into account is evidence. Evidence is often left behind, um, because they open thousands and thousands of files, while they're going in and looking through these systems, loopholes. Stuff often gets misplaced. It's like working through a system, I mean, through an engine, and you have tools all over the place. Once you're done, you're bound to leave a few things out, because as you're trying to put everything back together, some things just get misplaced or left out of the loop, and then one of two things happen. It creates a vulnerability that was not there before, or um, information gets leaked that was supposed to stay confidential in the most part, in most cases. So with ethical hacking, my stance is, um, it's it's more unethical in my opinion, because of the invasion of privacy. You're pretty much paying somebody to come in and snoop through all of your personal information, data, finances, and who's to really say, you know what is being done behind closed doors, and what is being taken. um for example, one thing, one person actually, is the case of Gary McKinnon. Gary McKinnon, in 2002, I believe, he was attempting to hack a U.S. military system in the hopes of bringing them completely down. He was trying to shut these companies down. And Gary McKinnon was just a systems administrator at an office in Scotland. All he did was just pretty much regular IT work. But when he went back home, he would go into full blown hack mode. So he allegedly immobilized systems in the wake of 9/11, and then he admitted to hacking into US based systems, but said he was on a moral crusade. So he used the defense that he was only looking for information on UFOs and flying saucers that the government supposedly kept secret. And Gary McKinnon got his start at the age of 14, just messing with his very first computer at home, and then dabbled into the field of IT, and then ultimately became a hacker, a white hat, no, I'm sorry, a black hat hacker, and chose to hack U.S. government systems. And later on, I believe in 2013, it was found that Gary McKinnon had Asperger's disease, which is a form of autism that uh, where people tend to um, obsess over something. So once they come upon a subject, they just obsess and obsess and obsess up until they complete what they are trying to do. So that was when the charges were dropped against Gary McKinnon. But ultimately, his intentions were to immobilize the U.S. defense systems and cause about $800,000 allegedly of damage. And he started off as a normal IT guy working on people's laptops, checking their sensitive information, um, but when he went home, he chose to go to the dark side and hack, U.S. But other than U.S. government systems, who knows what else he did with the information that he probably gained. But that was considered a form of ethical hacking when he was doing the normal IT jobs, because that's all he was doing. He was just hacking and with the moral compass, according to him. But at night, would go home and hack, systems in general. And he started off with regular base UK and Scotland systems, and finally just went for the big price of US based systems, and was successful in causing over $800,000 of damage. So ethical hacking, in my opinion, is not really considered ethical, because there's so much behind it that can easily rule it as wrong, because there's so many layers of information that need to be gone through. And in a company of let's say 800 employees, how many of those 800 employees information is actually you know being put out there without their knowledge? So that's where I stand on ethical hacking.